They kept him awake for 30 days. The Russian sleep experiment. If you are a fan of the stories of history and its torture methods, then you might have probably heard of the Russian sleep experiment. This experiment became extremely popular upon its actual publication. It was shared originally on Creepypasta. This story is often shared with an image of a demonic, spine-chilling figure hinted to be one of the test subjects. Many believe that the story is based on a real account of surreal science experiments conducted during the World War era, while others say it's nothing more than eerie fiction. Well, let's find out the truth behind this story. Hello all and welcome back to yet another episode of Discovery Scene. Today we will discuss the story behind the infamous Russian sleep experiment. Are you scared already? Well, don't worry because I am too, but let the horror fest begin. The story takes place in the late 1940s when some Russian researchers decided to keep 5 people without sleep for over 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were confined in a closed chamber to carefully monitor their intake of oxygen. The chamber only had microphones and thick glass porthole-sized windows to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, running water, a toilet, cots to sleep on but with no bedding, and food to last over a month. The test subjects were enemies of the state during World War II, who were kept as political prisoners. For the first 5 days, everything went fine. The test subjects hardly had any changes and were calm as they were promised to be freed if they gave the test and didn't sleep for 30 days. Their activities and conversations were observed, and it was noted that they started to talk with each other about their rising traumatic incidents in the past, but the tone of their conversations went on a darker side after day 4. After day 5, they began complaining about the events and circumstances leading them there and demonstrating severe paranoia. They ceased talking to each other and alternately whispering through the one-way mirrored portholes. The problem started on the 9th day when one of them started screaming at the top of his lungs. He ran throughout the chamber and called continuously for 3 hours straight. He continued trying to scream but could only produce occasional squeaks. The researchers assumed that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most shocking thing about this behavior was how the other captives didn't even react. They continued whispering until the second prisoner started to scream. On the 12th day, the researchers checked them constantly since they thought it was strange that no sound could be coming from these people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber showed that all 5 were still alive. On the 14th day, the researchers performed something they said they wouldn't do to get a reaction from the prisoners. They cast off an intercom inside the chamber, hoping to get a response from them. They were afraid that they were dead. To their surprise, they had heard a single sentence in a calm voice respond, quote, "We do not want to be freed," end quote. Debate broke out among the military forces and researchers funding the research. Unable to get any more response using the intercom, it was ultimately decided to open the room at midnight on the last day. I wouldn't dare step inside the chamber in my entire life if it were me. Curious to know more about what happened? Well, stay tuned till the end of this video, and also don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe button. The chamber was removed from the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air. Some voices began begging to turn the gas back on as if they were begging for their life of loved ones. The room was opened and soldiers were sent in to get the test subjects. They started to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 were still alive, although no one could exactly call the state that any of them were in life. The food rations after day 5 had not been touched as much. There were pieces of meat from the dead test subjects' chest and thighs stuffed into the drain in the middle of the chamber, blocking the drain and permitting 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Exactly how much of the water on the floor was blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had huge portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The damage of flesh and exposed bones on their fingertips showed that the wounds were caused by hand, not by teeth, as the researchers thought. Most of the abdominal organs below the ribcage of all 4 test subjects had been taken out. While the lungs, heart, and diaphragm remained in place, most of the muscles and some skin attached to the ribs had been removed, exposing the lungs through the ribcage. All of the organs and blood vessels remained intact. They had just been taken out and kept onto the floor, fanning out around the subjects' disemboweled but still living bodies. Their digestive tracts that could be seen working. It quickly became clear that they were eating their own flesh that they had ripped off over the course of the few days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special ops at the building, but didn't want to return to the chamber to remove the prisoners. They began to scream to be left in the room and alternatively demanded and begged that the gas be turned back on. To everyone's surprise, the prisoners put up a ferocious fight in the process of being taken away from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers passed away from having his throat ripped out, and another was deeply injured by having his testicles torn off and an artery in his leg cut by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers died, if you count the ones that committed suicide in the days following the incident. One of the 4 living prisoners had his spleen ruptured in the fight, and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers tried to sedate him, but this was impossible. He was injected with more than 10 multiples of the human dose of morphine and still fought like an animal, breaking the arm and ribs of one doctor. The heart appeared to beat for a full 3 minutes after he had bled out that moment. There was more oxygen in his vascular system than there was blood. Even after it stopped, he didn't stop screaming and flailing for another 3 minutes, trying to attack anyone in reach, and just repeated the word "more" over and over until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 prisoners were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility, the 2 with functional vocal cords continuously requesting the gas and demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was brought to the surgical operating room in the facility. In the action of preparing the subject to have his organs kept back within his body, it was established that he was immune to the sedative they had given him to make him ready for the surgery. He fought furiously against them when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to rip up most of the way through a 3-inch leather strap on one wrist. When the surgery concluded, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to speak while struggling. Considering this might be something of drastic significance, the surgeon brought a pen and pad so the patient could write his message. It was simple: keep cutting. The only remaining subject that could speak began screaming to be sealed. His brain waves displayed the same pattern as a person who had died from falling asleep. The commander ordered the chambers with the test subjects inside, as well as the researchers. One of the researchers pulled out a gun and shot the commander between his eyes. He then turns to the subjects and blew their brains out as well. They fled the area when he was about to shoot the remaining research and medical team members. Quote, "I would not be locked up in here with these creatures. Not with you," he yelled at the man. "What are you? I must know." End quote. The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so quickly?" the subject asked. "We are you. We are the madness that lies within you all, begging to be free at any moment within your deepest minds. We are what you stay away from in your beds every single night. We are what you sedate into paralysis and silence when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot move." The researcher stopped, then aimed at its heart and fired. The EEG flatlines as the subject choked out slowly, "So nearly free." And with that, we have reached the end of today's video. It's horrifying and deep, isn't it? If you like this video, then don't forget to hit the like button, and here are some amazing videos that I think you'll enjoy. Simply click the left button or the right button to watch it. Stay tuned for the next one, and we will see you in the next video.